Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
He is Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Host of the Chris Stigall Show.
So let's bring in talk radio host Chris Stigall.
Also, his podcast is a must-listen every day. Chris Stigall Show podcast.
And host of the Chris Stigall Show.
Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
Please welcome Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Hey there, thanks a lot for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. So grateful that you choose this show. We know that there are a gazillion different podcasts to choose from these days, but here we are in our almost fifth year of podcasting, and that you've continued to make ours a destination for news and comment just means more than I can say. So sincerely, thanks for subscribing. Thanks for turning other people onto this show. If you know folks that might enjoy it and maybe haven't listened to it yet, I hope you'll pass it along to them. I always appreciate your 5-star reviews and your written reviews at Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And I would also just tell you, if you're not a Rumble subscriber, you can watch this show and listen to it that way on YouTube when they let us and they allow free speech, and on Rumble. Check that out there every day. So thanks a lot for being here, and thanks for supporting our sponsors. Times are not great economically. Money is tight. People are being stretched thin. And one of the ways, if you buy your own health insurance, that's a huge, huge outlay of money. John Ruhlman knows that. His team at U.S. Medical Plan knows that. And I would just tell you that if you have not shopped for health insurance lately, you really need to call John's team and let them get to work on finding better coverage for you. Yes, I said better, not just cheaper, but better too. 30 to 60% less expensive than what you're paying. And yes, at least equal to or better coverage. The thing is, you may be paying an exorbitant sum of money for your small business employees, for yourself as an individual. Maybe you're a senior on a fixed income and you buy that supplemental plan to help with your Medicare costs. Are you getting the best possible bang for your buck? Now, young people, if you don't have health insurance because money's tight, you're probably going to get the cheapest of all the rates out there. But what about the current insurance you have? Do you know what it actually covers? Do you know if you need it? If you have an emergency and you go to the hospital, you have surgery, or you're extended sick or something like that, God forbid, what does it cover? Let John do some homework for you for a couple of minutes. Let him work with his network of private insurers to find you a better rate and better coverage. The last thing any of us wants is to be stuck with subpar insurance when we need it. And if you can get it for cheaper too, like 30 to 60% less, isn't that worth a couple of minutes of your time? It's John Ruhlman and his team at usmedicalplan.com. That's usmedicalplan.com or 877-410-4321. This is going to be a special kind of Friday. Everything is just going right. Right from the beginning of the show. As we begin the show today, ladies and gentlemen, the Philadelphia police are moving in on the filth of the Penn encampment, which, this is still going on. As I said at the beginning of the week, they acted like these things were over. Most major campuses still have these little pipsqueak vermin layabouts in their paid-for tents in most of their campuses, hunkered down, refusing to leave. And so, in fact, let's just jump right in and listen to some of the coverage of this, because they are the live local Philadelphia news is covering these cops in their riot gear, moving in on all these filthy scumbags, wearing rags, and I just love that we're starting the day. This is they just moved in, right, this morning?
Yeah, at the 6 a.m. I saw them starting to march on Penn's campus.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, wonderful. And this on the heels of the governor calling on the students to disband. This yesterday, citing increased unlawfulness. The governor of Pennsylvania Thursday calling on the University of Pennsylvania to disband. Over the last 24 hours, the situation has gotten more unstable and out of control, he said. More rules have been violated. More laws have been broken. That is unacceptable. It is past time for the university to address this, disband the encampment, and restore order. Penn did not respond to a request for comment. Shapiro's remarks come in stark contrast to last week, when he deferred questions about whether the encampment should be disbanded. Oh, I don't think it's my judgment on that matters. I think it's the university's judgment. Well, they've already had to kick out their president for being an anti-Semite. So who's running the place over there? All right, so let's listen to a little of this. This is fun.
To one of those police vans, guys. Excuse me, sir. I'm sorry. I'm just following my cameraman. Can I stick with him? I understand, sir, but Greg got past them. He walked by before he realized that the police didn't want him back there. He's got a very good shot of you of that young woman being loaded into the van, and he'll be brought back over to me. I'm certainly not going to be one of the ones getting loaded into that van this morning. I can tell you that for sure. But Greg will be backing off. Got a great shot of that young woman being booked, but there'll be another one coming out as well. As a matter of fact, if they book everybody sitting on that Ben Franklin statue right now, they're probably going to have 40 arrests this morning, and there'll be others from people that are intense, resisting in other ways.
This is just spectacular. Well, okay, so that's how our morning's going to start, and I'm just as in good. I was already in great spirits, and I've got a stack of stories that make me feel great. Had a great night of patriotism last night. Just, boy, what a way to kick off the week. Trump's coming to Wildwood. Things just couldn't be better. You know, last night I was there at the Union League, the most patriotic place in Philadelphia next to Independence Hall as far as I'm concerned. There is no place that more busts at the seams with pride of country, love of country, patriotism, the American spirit, the celebration of free markets, liberty. Their whole motto at the Union League, love of country leads. And if you don't know the Union League, if you ever get the opportunity, they offer tours of the place. You should. It's in as much as it's a private city club, and most major cities have these private city clubs, so I know a lot of people think, oh, well, that's just a club, I can't go. No, they actually have lots of open tours where you can go in and tour it, and they have a tremendous art gallery. There are portraits and statues of presidents in this place that would rival any major art gallery. Truly, it's just a beautiful, beautiful historic building. And last night they hosted the Commonwealth Foundation's 35th anniversary gala to, the Commonwealth Foundation, first of all, I should just say, great friends of this show. The Commonwealth Foundation have been a resource to us since we started doing this show 13 years ago or whatever in town. And I have known repeatedly that if we need perspective on free markets and liberty and limited government positions, it's the Commonwealth Foundation in Harrisburg that is leaning on the legislature to get things done. Do you know that they have now something like $500 million, I believe, that they in reserve to issue as scholarships for students who would like to get out of their failing public schools? There were parents from South Philadelphia there last night who were trapped in their public school, and because of the Commonwealth Foundation and the funds that they've raised, are able to award grants and scholarships to certain families to get them out of their failing public schools. The Commonwealth Foundation advocates for school choice in Pennsylvania, among many, many other things. They have, I think they said they were part of rolling back something like $88 million in potential tax hikes, maybe billion, I remember, to Pennsylvanians. Anyway, special people that do tremendous free market, liberty-minded work at a time we desperately need it. And they're as optimistic as they can be. They really feel, they kept referring to Pennsylvania as the biggest, most important swing state in the country. And they really feel that they've got momentum and the wind at their back. They honored a gentleman last night called Thomas Beach for their first annual Champion of the Commonwealth Award. Really significant guy who has done, he's the founder and managing director at something called Beach Investment. He's a longtime board member of the Commonwealth Foundation, and he's put a lot of his time and his own resources into this place. They just opened a new branch of their building and named it after him last night. Really impressive guy. He gave a beautiful speech on liberty and limited markets, and it was just as inspirational as it could be. Our buddy Guy Shiraki, his lovely wife Chris, were in attendance. That was who I was with last evening, and just spectacular. Union League, beautiful as always, so I appreciate the invitation. It was a real pleasure to be there. Yeah, and then I wake to this stuff. They're cleaning out the rabble on the campus of Penn. Philadelphia is looking positively beautiful this morning.
What's going on, man? Kensington yesterday, Penn today. It's wow. What a good day, man.
It really is. It's just been a fantastic start to the weekend. And then I've just got all kinds of stories in front of me that are going to perk you right up. Joe Biden's weapons curb sparks Israeli defiance. Just as I predicted, Benjamin Netanyahu said yesterday, "To hell with you, Husk. You think we're unfamiliar at standing alone? We've got kind of a history of doing this thing alone. We don't need you. We're happy to move on by ourselves. And he's gonna. President Biden's decision to curb offensive weapons shipments to Israel to signal U.S. opposition to a looming offensive against Palestinian militants in the besieged Gaza city of Rafah drew a defiant rebuke from Benjamin Netanyahu. Defiant. Talk of impeachment from Republican critics on Capitol Hill, which of course they won't, but we laid out that case yesterday. I mean, there's any number of reasons you could impeach Joe Biden. The open border for starters, the Chinese spy balloon for another, the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. Now this, turning your back on congressionally mandated weaponry to Israel. There are a host of reasons you could impeach Joe Biden if you wanted to. Accusing Mr. Biden of abandoning a longtime ally, Republicans began drafting impeachment articles yesterday. Yeah, they said they had no choice. You believe they're going to offer impeachment articles at the Husk Fest, Eddie?
No.
I don't either. Don't hold your breath. Mr. Netanyahu said Israel will stand alone to defeat Hamas if need be. Said it was imperative to ensure Hamas militants make a final stand in Rafah and not be allowed to make a final stand or have the means to ambush the Israelis ever again, as they did on October 7th. Don't blame them. Good for them. Keep it up. And the blowback from all of this is really getting intense. The New York Times, in announcing the United States will pause delivery of 3,500 bombs to Israel, Joe Biden has made a laudable motive of wanting to spare innocent Palestinians from the military consequences of Hamas using Rafah as its last stronghold. Less laudably, but no less understandably, he also needs to shore up support among progressive voters who think that Israel's use of American weapons implicates us in war crimes. What lunatic fringe thinks that? This is the New York Times. Joe Biden is making a laudable attempt, a goal at placating progressive voters who think Israel's use of American weapons implicates us in war crimes. Can that be that large a segment of the population? How fractious, how tenuous must Joe Biden's support be that he's pandering to people who would accuse us of war crimes for aiding our greatest ally against one of the most vicious, scum-of-the-earth, totalitarian, authoritarian, Islamic fanatic radicals in the world, Hamas? How would you accuse us aiding our greatest ally with weapons to take that vermin out, implicate us in war crimes? How lunatic are you to, one, hold that position? How tenuous a grasp on electoral politics must you have if you've got to pander to that way of thinking just to hold together support for victory this fall? That's pretty sad. Basically, what they're telegraphing is the motivated base of people to turn out for the Husk and Democrats are straight up fringe loons, and they need every last one of them. So what do we got to do to get them? The tragedy in Gaza is fundamentally the result of Hamas's decisions. To start the war in the most brutal way possible, to fight it behind and beneath civilians, to attack border crossings through which humanitarian aid is delivered, and to hold on cruelly to Israel's 132 remaining hostages, living or dead. Am I really reading from the New York Times? This can't be. Anyway, whatever else the arms cutoff might accomplish, writes the New York Times, when it comes to Israel, Hamas is emboldened. Without weapons support to Israel, Hamas is emboldened to continue to play for time, especially in hostage negotiations, with the idea that the longer they hold out, the likelier they are to survive. This does not end the war, it prolongs it. No Israeli government is going to leave Gaza with Hamas still in control of any part of the territory. The Biden administration has ideas about how to do that without dodging it from Rafah, yet we have not heard of them. So the New York Times is in a spot here. They want desperately to kiss up to progressives too, but they know full well Israel's on the side, or at least they're writing now, Israel's on the side of justice and truth here and right. And they said Hamas is not going to relent if we show weakness and say we're not with them. Hamas is going to feel more bold in hanging tough. Our propaganda campaign is working. Our progressive friends in the United States are doing our job for us. Hang tough, fellas. The United States is not coming in to ride to the rescue and the aid of Israel. Hang tough. Now, they're about to find out. Israel is not reliant on the United States to take them out, and Israel will make quick work of them when they decide to. But it's very, very interesting that the New York Times says, you know, the fastest way to end this is what? What is this basically advocating? Ronald Reagan's peace through strength. This is an editorial about as much as we hate it and as much as we're progressive, Biden may have made his biggest blunder, is their headline, because in his steadfast willingness to back the progressive agenda in this country, what it actually does is show weakness, an unwillingness to finish the job and root out these goons, Hamas. And I find it kind of remarkable, actually, that here we are. Like I said, there's a special kind of something in the air. This is the New York Times on a Friday, saying as much as it pains us, Joe Biden showing weakness and a lack of resolve and support for Israel is actually going to make things worse. What? No, you didn't hit your head. Yes, you're awake. And you're really hearing me read that from the New York Times today. Here's another one. 15 House Democrats call on Biden to take border executive action. Ho ho! A group of House Democrats facing a tough campaign cycle calling on Joe Biden to take executive action on the border with Mexico. Legislators from Minnesota, Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. What do those states have in common? Democrats from Minnesota, Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Those are odd states for Democrats to be piping up. I wonder why them, Fast Eddie.
Yeah, including, what was it Jason Miller said? Trump came the closest to winning Minnesota? That's the first state you led with there?
Yeah. Interesting. So these might be swing states, urging Biden in a letter first obtained by CBS News to immediately take further action to restore order at the southern border and fix our broken immigration system. In April, CBS News, a poll of 3 presidential battleground states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, show that a majority of likely voters view the U.S.-Mexico border as a major factor in their vote for president. Uh-oh. Ladies and gentlemen, this is one ugly Friday for the Husk. He wakes up to the New York Times scolding him for withholding weapons from Israel. He wakes up to CBS News saying swing state Democrats want him to take action on the border right now. President Biden made his biggest blunder, headline in the New York Times. From the Hill, over there at CNN, the correspondent and contributor David Axelrod, the chief strategist behind the one, Barack Obama. Biden's pride may cost him the election. I hate to get too giddy about all of this, but my gosh, it's just one after another. The hits keep coming. Senior Democrat strategist David Axelrod hitting Joe Biden over his economic messaging this week, following a campaign event in Milwaukee, saying the president's pride could be his undoing. Biden consistently framing struggles with the economy in past tense and treating the issue as already won. But most Americans disagree, with polls showing most trusting former President Trump on the economy by a lot. Here's some of what Axelrod was saying.
I don't understand this. I don't understand all these months later. You know, I thought they spent $25 million mistakenly last fall touting Bidenomics and making the same argument that the president's making here. It is absolutely true. The world was plunged into an economic crisis, and America was plunged into an economic crisis by the pandemic, and we've come back faster than almost any other country. And he's right about that, but that's not the way people are experiencing the economy. They're experiencing it through the lens of the cost of living. And he is a man who's built his career on empathy. Why not lead with the empathy? And I think he's making a terrible mistake. You know, it may not be, if he doesn't win this race, it may not be Donald Trump that beats him. It may be his own pride.
Oh, my. John King also out there on CNN warning Biden, you'd better knock it off with all this positive economy talk.
We've already turned it around. Look, you look at the Michigan survey. For 65% of American people think they're in good shape economically. They think the nation's not in good shape, but they're personally in good shape. The polling data has been wrong all along. We have the strongest economy in the world. Let me say it again, in the world.
He's right. We do have the strongest economy in the world, but poll after poll also shows that the way people are feeling is that they're underwater because of inflation.
I can tell you from my travels, 8 months now, 9 states now, he has to be careful with that. In the sense, he's right. When he cites the statistics, he is right. When he says the Michigan Consumer Confidence Survey, 65% say they're doing better off. Guess what? The 35% who don't, a lot of those are his voters. They should be his voters. When you travel the cost of living. In Michigan, we met with those younger voters. We also are starting to put together a group of auto workers. Their union has endorsed Biden. Most of them are going to vote for Biden. But you ask them what life is like, and they can't buy a bigger house because of mortgage rates. They still, when you talk about grocery prices. And so the president has to be careful here. That sounds like somebody in Washington telling people you're wrong, and whatever your party is, voters don't process it that way. They don't like that.
Oh,
Definitely
John,
don't like
John King is doing some self-talk here in the mirror. I get out of here every now and again. I leave Washington every now and again. I talk to real people, these zoo animals out there, and I've heard from them, and they apparently think groceries are expensive and stuff. I've left planet Neptune here, called Washington, D.C., and I've ventured out there. And all these space aliens, our viewers, and they call them voters, I guess, out there, they're apparently not very happy with the economy. I know, because I've traveled out of here, and I've seen it, and I've talked to people. I mean, not me. I'm fabulously wealthy and well-connected, and I know politicians. But, when I travel, I hear some people are out there struggling, including young people. Some of them can't buy houses. I mean, I think the unions are still going to vote for him and everything. Don't worry about that. I'm John King, and I think the union men are going to vote. You want to bet, John? Keep telling yourself that, why don't you? So the alarm bells going off over at CNN. Knock off this positive economy talk. It ain't positive. People don't think it's... Remember the poll I had yesterday that said the biggest losses for Joe Biden right now were with the youth, as well as on the whole Green Deal movement, that whole environmental eco-wacko thing. Young people are falling off on that the fastest in terms of labeling it a priority, which is why the left's not really talking much about that. And then, of course, there's the fact that they, as much as they try, look, we shut down this whole, even though as they're arresting protesters on the campus of Penn at the very hour I'm speaking, which is hilarious, the media all week has tried to pretend that that's over. After last week's James Carville freak out, you got to stop talking, quit talking about this stuff. You got to talk about Trump. You got to talk about Trump. You got to quit talking about all these protesters. This isn't important. Get these cameras out of there. And so all the media did what James Carville ordered this week. Okay, we won't talk about the protesters. We'll go back to talking about Stormy Daniels and Trump. Well, old James is back, and he doesn't seem to think that's working now either, damn it.
And Trump's more ahead than he's ever been. Fewer people think January 6th was any kind of what it was, as an assault on the temple of democracy, our Constitution. I don't know whatever you want to say. It's going the wrong way. It's not working. Everything that we're throwing is spaghetti at a wall, and none of it is sticking.
Well, keep talking about the economy being great.
And it's hard when you're starting your 80th year, and you like anybody else, I have an opinion of myself, and the opinion I've come to is I don't matter. It doesn't matter. You can prepare. You can be on TV. Or you can write pieces. You can have a YouTube channel. You can have a podcast. And nothing. Nothing. And, we got to, try to think of something different. Because what we're doing is really, really not working.
You don't say. Oh, my goodness. Well, they took James's advice this week, and they did nothing but Stormy Daniels, Stormy Daniels, Stormy Daniels. And James is perplexed again. It's week number 2, and damn it, I told them, get the cameras off these protests, and they're not working out there. Now nobody's talking about Trump. They don't like it out there. I am enjoying this so much. This is the greatest Friday I can remember in a long time. CNN warning Biden, would you stop telling everybody the economy is great? James Carville saying, nobody cares about Trump. I can't believe it. I don't know why. The assault on the temple of democracy, and nobody cares. Because nobody believes you. Nobody thinks January 6th was an assault on the temple of democracy. Nobody thinks the economy is great. Nobody supports these Hamas-loving, Jew-hating college goons on college campuses. Nobody believes we should abandon Israel in their time of need. Nobody thinks we should have a wide-open border. It's all coming home to roost now. Oh, and then this just for added fun. Here's just a little cherry on the top of the cake. Judge denies Hunter Biden's bid to dismiss gun charges. A federal judge in Delaware denying Hunter Biden's bid to throw out his felony gun charges yesterday. Rejecting arguments from the president's son, the federal prohibition on owning guns while using illegal drugs is unconstitutional under the Second Amendment. Can you believe that? He tried to use the Second Amendment in his defense. Separately, a federal appeals court ruled against Biden earlier in the day yesterday in another bid to have the charges against him tossed. The two decisions appear to clear the way for the Hunter Biden case to head to trial beginning in June. And in case you've forgotten, because nobody likes to talk about this anymore, that Biden was charged, that's Hunter Biden, charged with illegally buying a gun while using illegal drugs and lying on a government form about his drug use when he made the purchase. Those are two separate criminal charges that would put any one of us, by the way, behind bars for a long time. If I were high on drugs and lied on a gun form, you think I'd be sitting behind this microphone today? The hell. Hunter Biden roams free. And everybody sees the two-tiered system of justice, which gets back to James Carville. Why isn't it working out there? Why aren't people upset about Trump? Because we all know Hunter Biden committed 2 felonies alone in this story, and he walks free. And we're supposed to believe that Donald Trump paying a woman to shut up and go away is some huge crime for which he should be locked up? No one believes it. No one believes our border should be open. No one believes we shouldn't be aiding Israel after they were slaughtered on October 7th. No one believes the economy is great. They live in a fiction. It's not working out there. Everything we're trying, nothing's working. It's like throwing spaghetti at the wall and it won't stick. Because you're liars. You don't have anything to offer the American people, James. You don't have anything to offer. What are you telling the American people that will make their lives better? What about anything you people stand for makes anything about our lives in this country better, more secure, more prosperous? Restoring justice. What? What do you offer? Can you find anything these people stand for that will improve your life? I can't. Just a bunch of scumbags in tents chanting for theocracies that throw gays off of roofs and subjugate women. Bunch of people talking about leaving the border wide open and inflating. You know, once upon a time, comedy used to make fun of what Democrats do now. When Jimmy Carter had ratcheted up inflation to the extent that government has today, Saturday Night Live once made fun of this. Dan Aykroyd used to do. There was a clip floating around out there on social media, and I just came across it last night. And it's really remarkable, actually, because once upon a time when comedy actually meant something, and shows like Saturday Night Live believed in speaking truth to power, they did a whole opening sketch mocking Jimmy Carter and inflation in that time, and it was really pretty brilliant, as a matter of fact. Let me play some of this for you, because this is back in the late 70s. SNL was just getting started. The concept was, we're going to skewer people in power. We're going to mock people in positions of authority. At that time, it was Jimmy Carter and rampant inflation. And here's how Saturday Night Live treated it then.
Inflation is our friend. For example, consider this. In the year 2000, if current trends continue, the average blue-collar annual wage in this country will be $568,000. Think what this inflated world of the future will mean. Most Americans will be millionaires. Everyone will feel like a big shot. Wouldn't you like to own a $4,000 suit and smoke a $75 cigar, drive a $600,000 car? I know I would. But what about people on fixed incomes? They have always been the true victims of inflation. That's why I will present to Congress the Inflation Maintenance Program, whereby the U.S. Treasury will make up any inflation-caused losses through direct tax rebates to the public in cash. Now, you may say, won't that cost a lot of money? Won't that increase the deficit? Sure it will. But so what? We'll just print more money.
See, I mean,
we have the paper.
And it goes on. This is what comedy used to be. When we were in a state of inflation and people were struggling, comedy shows used to make fun of people struggling. And the cause of it? Government printing too much money. And they mocked an ignorant Jimmy Carter at the time for saying, well, you know how we can get ourselves out of this? Just print more money. Everybody will feel like a big shot. You'll be pushing wheelbarrows of cash around. We'll all be millionaires. This is what people in media and comedy used to do. And we're living it now. Except now they're trying to pretend it doesn't exist, and they just keep, look at those Republicans over there. Aren't they stupid? Well, now they're cracking up. They can't hold it together anymore. And it has bubbled over to James Carville. Nothing's sticking. Nothing's working. I don't understand it. Because you people can't tell the truth. You won't acknowledge where we are. And they're over there at CNN. You better stop lying about the economy. People don't feel very great about it. Thanks, John. Thanks, Dave. Could have told you that 3 years ago. What a beautiful Friday. I'm so proud to be affiliated with GulagAmerica.com. They've been great friends. They are founding harumphers, and they have funny, fantastic products just in time for mom. Apparel that you'd love to give mom as a gift, or you yourself, if you're a mom, give yourself the gift. Because Mother's Day is right around the corner. Why shouldn't you go shopping? Check out GulagAmerica.com and go to their For the Ladies collection. They've got some hilarious stuff there, like this shirt that says, my pronouns are her, she, and chocolate. My wife would love that one. Another one that simply provides the definition of a woman, noun, adult female human being, period. But that, which is particularly helpful for someone like, I don't know, the newest Supreme Court justice. And don't forget, their pre-Brandon pricing. This is pre-inflation and pre-Husk pricing. All year long, just $24 for any of their standard T-shirts. Just $24. And you'll get an additional 10% off that, your entire order, when you use my promo code Chris10. They want to know you listen. And I would love for you to tell them that you support them and you listen to the show by going to GulagAmerica.com, buy one of their great shirts, and when you check out, use Chris10 as your promo code. You'll get another 10% off the already really affordable price. Gulag America, where they always like to remind you it is not their wish, it's their warning. So I'm not going to beat around the bush about it. This week, Dr. Sebastian Gorka visited, and we had a little cigar night, and the topic of vice president came up, and who Trump ought to pick as a vice president. And the crowd asked Seb and myself who we thought would make great Veeps, and we were throwing out names. You want to know the first name Seb said? Dr. Ben Carson, author of a brand new book called The Perilous Fight, Overcoming Our Culture's War on the American Family. I could beat around the bush on this, Dr. Carson, but I may as well just start rather than conclude with the question everybody wonders. Could Dr. Ben Carson be the pick? Good morning.
Good morning. Nice to be with you.
Yeah, so you're going to evade the question right out of the gate, huh? Is that it?
Well, let me put it this way. I am definitely committed to trying to save our country. And whether I do that from inside or outside the government, I will be there.
Not a no.
Not a no.
Okay. Because, you served in the President Trump's first cabinet, and I know that you felt great about your time in public service, and you're perfectly willing to do that again in whatever capacity you're asked, I'm sure.
It's so vitally important. I don't think most people recognize what danger we're in right now. And when Benjamin Franklin came out of that Constitution Hall in 1787, he was asked, "Sir, what do we have here, a monarchy or a republic?" He said, "A republic if you can keep it." We're as close to losing it now as we have ever been in over 240 years. Complete disregard of law and order from the bottom of the society to the top of the society. It's not too late to change that.
I know, Dr. Carson, you're a man of great faith, and one of the things that I personally am involved in with my wife is an organization dedicated to expanding and growing private Christian education. And I'm very happy to say anecdotally with my own eyes what I'm seeing, particularly, and we were just discussing this in previous shows, is the fact that Catholic school, private Christian school, exploding, particularly with young kids, little kids, like K through 5, K through 6. Are you seeing that? Are you hearing that? I assume, given your subtitle, Overcoming Our Culture's War on the American Family, if in fact you get the sense that that's the trend, that's very good news.
Well, the American people are not stupid, and they recognize what's going on. Our children are being indoctrinated, and some people think that this is of recent origin. This has been going on for a long time. And if you look at the congressional record, January 10th, 1963, over 60 years ago, Congressman Herlong of Florida read into the congressional record the 45 goals of communists in America. Most of those things have been accomplished, and they include gaining control of the school system and the teacher unions so that you could indoctrinate the kids. It's a Marxist ideology. Vladimir Lenin said, "Give me your children to teach for 4 years, and the seed that I sow will never be uprooted." And I think a lot of our Americans are recognizing that. That's why private education, homeschooling have just exploded and will continue to explode. It's one of the reasons that we have the Little Patriots program, which is part of American Cornerstone, free of charge, by the way, which teaches children the real elements for the development of this country. Why was it successful? And we went from a ragtag bench militiaman to the pinnacle of the world in record time. That was not a coincidence. It was because of the belief systems that we had. It doesn't mean that we were perfect. No society composed of human beings is perfect. But we were very different from all the places that were there before us. And we believed in God. We had faith. That faith taught us how to relate to each other. Love your neighbor. Not hate your neighbor. Not try to cancel your neighbor if they have a different yard sign. And people learn the concept of working together, unity. What a difference that made. If you were in a community years ago in this country and Mr. Johnson fell out of the tree and broke his leg and it was harvest time, everybody else harvested his crops. No questions asked. They didn't care what his religion was or what his politics were. They knew that he was their neighbor and he was in need. We need to get back to that.
Dr. Ben Carson's brand new book is called The Perilous Fight, Overcoming Our Culture's War on the American Family. And you're also the founder of, you mentioned it, the American Cornerstone Institute. Can you tell us a little about the Institute, what it's all about for people that don't know?
Yeah, well, when the Trump administration ended, I said, finally I can retire, because I had failed retirement the first time. But
yeah, you'd been sloughing off with that brain surgery stuff, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
you were kind of due a break. I mean, if anybody were due a break, it was you, and then you go into official Washington. But yeah, so you're ready to cool off and take a break, and then along comes this, huh?
Yeah. Well, seeing the direction of our country, myself and several extremely talented people from HUD got together, and we said, we have to join the fight here. We can't just let our country go and enjoy our lives and just say too bad for everybody else. So we said, what are the cornerstone principles that made us great? Our faith, liberty, community, and life, respect for life from the womb to the tomb. And then we also had the Little Patriots program, Executive Branch for America, and a number of programs. People go to AmericanCornerstone.org. There's more stuff there than there is on HBO. You'll be able to entertain yourself for a long time, but more importantly, you'll be educated, and that is the key. We have to know who the people are, what the situation is, who your enemy is. You'll never win a fight if you don't know who you're fighting.
Dr. Carson, I was looking at the headlines today, and I have to say I had a bit of a spring in my step because it feels like, I never want to get cocky or overly confident, but today it feels like the worm is turning a little bit. You're seeing these campuses that have been overrun with these ne'er-do-well kids who don't know what they're talking about, other than they're just filled with a bunch of rage, directionless rage, and I think that's symptomatic of what you've written about in your book, The Culture War on American Family. The Perilous Fight is his book. But so now we see police moving in on them. The public sentiment is not with this mess. Even the New York Times has written about Joe Biden making the biggest political blunder maybe of his career in threatening to withhold arms to Israel. You got James Carville and CNN folks begging him to stop talking about how great the economy is because they know better. They know it's not. And Carville even flipping out Dr. Carson saying people don't care about this Trump trial. It's not working, and they're mad about it. I don't know. This is all anecdotal, and of course, all that matters is the election. But does it feel to you like the American public's not going to be fooled this time?
Well, I go around the country doing a lot of engagements, a lot of speaking, and that's certainly the impression that I'm getting. I'm not seeing a whole lot of people who are behind these things that the administration is doing, and they recognize the trouble that we're in, and they're taking action. And I think if we can have a fair election, you'll see a massive change.
And that's a big if, isn't it? Because a lot of people I'm sure you hear from too. Dr. Carson, I care so deeply about the country. I don't think they'll let him win. I think the system's rigged. A lot of pessimism. I always like to ask great thinkers like you, what do you say to pessimists who probably have come up to you and said that? Because I hear that a lot, and I'm just curious what you say in response.
I say the founders of our country were very wise men, and they recognized that we would get to this point. And that's why they placed the ultimate power in the hands of the people, the power to vote. But the people have to use that appropriately. That means learning how to vote, learning who you're voting for. Most people go into the booth, and they just look for the name that looks familiar. Could be Satan. Yeah, I know that name. They check it. That's how we get into these situations. You got to know who you're voting for. And then we don't have to settle for blatant unfairness. When people come out and say, you can monitor this polling place, but you have to do it from way over there where you can't see what's going on. We don't accept that. They say the signatures don't have to match. Of course they have to match. 1,000 ballots come from the same address. They say, that's okay. It's not a big problem, and we can't deny people the right to vote. People don't need an ID. Are you kidding me? These are things that are happening because we're allowing them to happen, and they will continue to happen if we continue to allow them to happen. I'm very happy to see Laura Trump in the position that she's in because, I've talked to her about this. She recognizes that this is a serious issue, and it shouldn't be a partisan issue. We should all be foursquare behind election integrity.
Dr. Ben Carson's book is called The Perilous Fight, Overcoming Our Culture's War on the American Family. The president is having a big rally tomorrow in Wildwood, New Jersey, South Jersey, on the shore. It looks like right on the beach, as a matter of fact, which I didn't know. Did you know this? I don't know if I'm right about this or not. Fast Eddie, is it true he's actually going to be on the beach, the physical beach?
It is. He's going to be on the beach, man.
Dr. Carson, this is like a country concert on the beach. I don't think I've ever seen him do this yet.
Right, and I guarantee you there'll be a big crowd, and they'll be very enthusiastic because the people know what's going on. They're not stupid. And, one of the things that I really want to emphasize is values and principles that are passed on where? by the family. And we have an attack on the family. It's being destroyed, particularly the role of men in the family. And we don't have to accept it. We don't have to just say, this is the way things are. This is not the way things are.
I can't wait to get my hands on the book. You're always welcome back, sir. And I have a very funny feeling, given your answer off the top, this is not the last we've heard of Dr. Ben Carson. That's all I'll say. I'm not going to put you in the weird spot of saying it, but if President Trump is successful, I have a very, very funny feeling that we're going to see Dr. Ben Carson, a key role of whatever that is, in another Trump administration. At least I hope, because we'll all be better for it.
And we all have to be courageous and remember that you cannot be the land of the free if you're not the home of the brave.
Dr. Carson, thanks for all the time. I mean, you really, honestly, you could have left and ridden off into the sunset as a wildly successful and prominent surgeon, and you didn't. I mean, you went into a life of public service. I don't know many people that would do it, and you continue to do it, and we're so grateful. At the very heart of our democracy lies a principle we hold sacred, and that's free speech. It's the cornerstone that supports every freedom we cherish, allowing ideas to flourish, debates to ignite, and progress to be made. Without it, our pursuit of liberty, our ability to challenge, or our capacity to innovate, it would be really constrained. Now, in today's digital age, the very platform that should democratize information is being allowed to narrow the spectrum of ideas we're exposed to. Really important discussions about our wealth, our rights, our future, systemically silenced or overshadowed in mainstream narratives, leaving many feeling voiceless in conversations that are really crucial to your financial independence and your security. And that's where the company Wealth Protection Research steps in. They're armed with a mission that's never been more critical. Wealth Protection Research is not a financial advisory firm. I want to be clear about that. They're defenders of free speech. They're committed to giving a voice to the silenced. In an era where dialogues about retirement, investments, economic freedoms are increasingly censored, Wealth Protection Research is focused on ensuring that diverse, controversial, and revolutionary ideas also get a platform. Wealth Protection Research tirelessly seeks out financial experts through leaders and thought leaders, trailblazers, all who've been pushed to the margins by mainstream media and tech platforms like Facebook and Google. These are the voices that challenge prevailing narratives, offering fresh, often contrarian perspectives on protecting and growing your wealth, especially as we navigate the uncertainties of this coming election. By spotlighting these thinkers, people like Jim Rickards or Porter Stansberry, Wealth Protection Research is not just sharing financial advice, they're fostering a movement toward a more open, informed, and free society. Wealth Protection Research has created a 2024 Election Wealth Protection Report, and it's a completely free report. It highlights the 3 best ideas for protecting and growing your money heading into the 2024 election, and it also contains ideas the mainstream media doesn't want to touch. Listeners to this show can get this whole thing completely free if you text the word ideas to 76626. Just text ideas to 76626, and if you do that today, you're also going to get a free gold investment kit from Wealth Protection Research. And the sponsor of that is Augusta Precious Metals, by the way, and we appreciate that. So just text ideas to 76626. If you're like me and you believe in the sanctity of free speech and the importance of financial freedom, act now. Text ideas to 76626. Claim your free copy of this 2024 election report. You know, it's time to widen the scope of what we're told. You know, we believe that here. Hear the ideas that establishment folks can't handle and don't think you can handle. Take control of your own financial destiny. Text ideas to 76626 to claim your free copy. The battle for free speech is the battle for our future, and Wealth Protection Research ensures that the ideas capable of shaping our financial well-being are available to all of us who want to hear them. So don't wait. Grab your free report right now. Text ideas to 76626 and claim your free copy. I got a call, Tuesday on this show to wrap up the show that I have had more email about. And those of you who were with us early probably did not hear this. It was a gentleman from Abington. He's a Marine, retired. And he was talking about Pride Month coming to the town of Abington and all across the country. You know, June is Pride Month. That's the Rainbow Flag Month. Also in June, of course, is the anniversary of D-Day. And if you've ever visited Normandy or ever have the chance to, I highly recommend it to you. Your heart will swell with pride, and you will actually see the physical landscape of what these heroes did there. When you physically see it and you know that story, it is as awe-inspiring as anything I've ever seen. So this gentleman calls the show to talk about Pride Month in his town of Abington, and that he thinks by no coincidence, and I tend to agree by no coincidence, they've decided to, instead of on June 6th, honor and commemorate D-Day, the 80th anniversary, they've decided they're going to have their Pride celebration in Abington instead. And the raw emotion that came out of this call really touched a lot of you. And like I said, I know some of you did not get to hear it, so I thought we should play it for you right now. All right? So here is that call from the end of the show. Was this Tuesday, Fast Eddie?
It was, yep.
All right, take a listen.
I called because I thought that your listeners might be interested. Everybody knows that June 6th is the 80th anniversary of D-Day, Operation Overlord. And on that day, President Roosevelt led the nation in prayer. It's phenomenal. Then in 1984, I was an F-4 pilot in the Marine Corps when Ronald Reagan stood at at Normandy, and talked about the boys of Pointe du Hoc.
Yes.
Well, fast forward to this year, and in 2024, Abington Township's Pride Fest isn't about proud to be an American, proud of all those service that people didn't know. They're having a Pride Fest on June 6th. They're going to raise a rainbow flag over our township, and then they're going to entice all the little kids to come to the library, and the thing's being run by their youth librarians to celebrate Pride Fest. This is where we've come in our country. And then the crazy thing is, it's being sponsored by Wawa and Rydell Park Senior Living in Jenkintown. Now, I'm not exactly sure why Rydell Park doesn't invite drag queens over to do a senior book reading, but instead...
I'm sorry to laugh. That's a weird spot. I mean, the corporate thing, all right, maybe you're kissing up to the movement, but yeah, you're right. Seniors, like a lot of those people are intimately familiar with World War II or close to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you told those seniors that they were sponsoring a Pride Fest at the library on June 6th, and the last thing, I cannot believe this is just a mistake. They picked a random day, and it just happened to be June 6th is when they decided to do this. With this Hamas flag raising all over the country and tearing down American flags, I just think that we're completely controlled by Democrats in Abington Township, and I really believe they are rubbing this in our faces. Mm-hmm. So if anybody out there is in Abington, if you could call the commissioners or the township and say this is completely inappropriate. That's just what I wanted to bring up.
Have you spoken to anybody about it yourself?
I did. I went and saw manager Manfredi yesterday, and he gives me the abba. It's not my call. I've written to the head of the township, who just happens to be a senior executive with Penn Medicine, who does transgender surgeries. Oh, this guy actually makes money off what they do to little kids. Mm-hmm. I've written to the head of the library board and also to some of the members on the board, and I said, this is completely inappropriate. And you're not going to believe this, but none of them have responded to me.
Yeah. I mean, the very least you could do is just move it a day. That's not going to be hard to do, right?
Yep.
At the very least. Listen, Joe,
Go
ahead.
Sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the whole idea of doing this on June 6th is I just can't believe, and I know I said it before, that this is just a random thing that was done. I literally was an F-4 pilot, and when Reagan made that speech, it made everybody proud. You could look at those guys who were 60-year-old men or whatever they were in 1944. Oh yeah, and we just had a veteran celebration. There's a 99-year-old man in Rockledge who came ashore not on D-Day but at Normandy, and he walked and fought his way all the way across Europe and ended up at one of the concentration camps in Eastern Germany. And these men are still alive. They're still here. We should be celebrating them and thanking them for the service they gave us. So that was it.
I hear the emotion in your voice.
Yeah, I'm pretty upset about this. Think about this, Chris. When we were kids, They had the longest day in 1962 where they talked about the D-Day. And then even in 1998, you had Saving Private Ryan, and they have them coming ashore on D-Day and working their way across. This is what I grew up with, talk about being proud. There was a man down the street, went through Iwo Jima. My brother's father-in-law flew a P-47 on D-Day at his 20-year-old man, and my wife and I have 2 kids in the Navy right now. And we're proud of our country, and we're proud of everything our country stands for. We should be celebrating that and teaching it to our kids. The idea that we're doing this to kids right now is outrageous.
Joe, your righteous indignation speaks volumes, and I am so grateful that you shared it. I'm so grateful your family has served the country, and you are so articulate in your reverence for these men who have fought and died so valiantly. Have you been, by the way, to Normandy? Have you ever been?
Sadly, I have not. I was deployed over to Western Pacific when I was in, and I have not, but I'd love to go there.
I tell you, it was one of the great blessings of my life was to get to take some listeners over there one year back in 2016. Yep. I will never forget it as long as I live, and I have never felt the patriotism that swelled inside me. Oddly, I had to leave this country and go to France to experience the patriotism I felt there. I couldn't more highly recommend it to every American if you get the chance.
Chris, when I was in the Philippines, my wife and I stood at the cemetery in the Philippines, and as a 26-year-old man, I cried.
I do.
It's phenomenal what they did. It's just phenomenal. We sailed through the Pacific. I've been to these battlefields in Papua New Guinea and throughout, and what our fathers and our uncles did is just unbelievable, and they all did it as 20-year-olds.
Yes. And you don't ever want that forgotten. We don't want that forgotten. Nope. Joe, may I ask you, are you, by chance, a Harumph Society member?
No, I'm not. I'm sorry.
I would love to make you one, because somebody with the kind of passion you have belongs in the Harumph Society. May I please give you a little token of my appreciation for your service as a Harumph Society complimentary member, honorary?
It's generous of you to do that. Thank you very much.
Oh, no, the very least I could do. But thank you for your passion. You have said so beautifully what so many of us feel. Thank you, sir. Hey, Mike Lindell and MyPillow, you know the name. 20 years they've been singing the jingle on Fox News and on the radio. And it's no secret that Mike and the company have come under a lot of scrutiny and a lot of attack. Big box stores have tossed MyPillow from their stores. Even the online retailers now won't sell MyPillow products. And who does that hurt, really? I mean, yeah, I understand they don't like Mike's position on the election or whatever, but Mike employs hundreds of Americans, hundreds of Minnesotans who make great products. If you know the MyPillow products, I sleep on them every night. So does my dog, Dean. They're great products, and he wants to sell them to you at unbelievable prices, by the way, but they're backed with a 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee, and most importantly, again, they're made here in the United States. So it's not something he's asking me to say. It's just something I'd like to remind you of, that a guy who has an opinion, who happens to own a very successful American company and employs a lot of Americans who make great American products that a lot of you have bought and owned or are looking to buy and own. I just want you to know that while he takes it on the chin a lot out there for having the positions he has, he wants to keep his employees busy. He wants to keep the company moving along, and so he's passing on huge, huge savings to you in what he's calling the $25 extravaganza. Getting the word out, I want to invite you to check out this $25 extravaganza today. 2 multi-pack MyPillows, just $25. MyPillow sandals, just $25. I'm looking at the list of these deals right now. 6-pack towel set, just $25. 6-pack of towels, $25. And the MyPillows with the new Giza fabric, just $25. And here's the thing, if you order any or all of this stuff, if you exceed $75 with your order, he ships it to you for free. So free shipping on anything $75 or over. And look, with all those deals and so many more at just $25 a piece, I think you'll be very, very pleased with not just the quality, but the price point and the free shipping. It's MyPillow.com. I hope you'll use the promo code ChrisPodcast. MyPillow.com, ChrisPodcast, to take advantage of all these savings. Get that free shipping over $75. Or call 800-932-5056. Great operators, American-based operators. You can call and say, hey, I'm with you. And hang in there, 800-932-5056. Don't forget the promo code ChrisPodcast. It lets them know you listen, which I appreciate, but more importantly, get you that deal. MyPillow.com or 800-932-5056. Promo code ChrisPodcast. Kristi Noem is having a disaster of a week. She's rolled out this brand new book that it appears to us clearly she has not written or read. She's had terrible interviews. It started with the dog thing, some odd story about her putting down her dog. And I said at the beginning of this thing, whatever, I don't know. She's trying to write a story about how she makes tough decisions and she put a dog down. This is supposedly going to make her look tough. But then as the week went on and she kept talking about the book, and she got asked specifically about talking and meeting with Kim Jong-un, and she couldn't really clarify that she had or hadn't really met him as she wrote, and things just continued to snowball and spiral.
Do you still think that you are in line to be Trump's vice president?
No, it's up to Donald Trump. He's the only person who will decide this. He's the only person who will decide. And I do speak to him.
May I ask what he said to you about being vice president?
No, I never tell anybody my personal conversations with
Did the dog story
President
come up
Trump.
in your conversation with Trump?
I talk to President Trump all the time.
About the dog?
About a lot of things. And right now, I tell you what, he is being persecuted in a political witch hunt in this court case. So I'm proud of him about how tough he is and how well he is doing.
Did you bring up the dog?
Yes, enough, Stuart.
Did you
this
bring
interview
up the dog
is
with Trump?
ridiculous, what you were doing right now. So you need to stop. It is.
Okay.
It is.
We'll
Let's
stop.
talk about some real topics that Americans care about.
I'm afraid we're out of time.
Oh, well, of course we are.
It wasn't maybe 24 hours after that all book tour visits, all interviews had been canceled. And Kristi Noem went back to South Dakota and has not been heard from since. And it led me to conclude that ultimately the woman has not written her own book. Now, you may or may not know what ghostwriting is. But our next guest knows a thing or two about it because he has done a lot of it. And in fact, when I saw him on X say that his daughter called him up after this disastrous book tour of Kristi Noem's and said, "Did you have a hand in this, Dad?" He said, "Nope, not me." Although I guess from what I gathered on his post, they asked him. So I haven't spoken with him yet. My old buddy Jack Cashill returns. By the way, his latest bestseller, Untenable, The True Story of White Ethnic Flight from America's Cities. It's a must-read. He's a New Jersey native, as a matter of fact, and that's what he writes about as sort of a jumping-off point. Jack, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me. And just a note about the Trump shore visit. This will surprise people who don't live in the area, but the New Jersey shore is huge Trump country.
Yes.
Ocean County, where we go, Seaside Heights, Ocean County went 2-1 for Trump in 2020. And there are Trump shops on the boardwalk. This is the same boardwalk that gave us the show Jersey Shore, right? I mean,
I've never seen anything like. I mean, this is going to be quite a picture, right? A beach rally. Yeah. He's never done one of these, I don't think. Yeah. So
Wildwood has a big beach, so there should be lots of room for people.
They sure do. All right, Jack. So let's start with the concept of ghostwriting, because I don't know that everybody understands this, and maybe you're not supposed to give up the proverbial ghost, but the fact of the matter is a lot of high-profile people, we don't need to name names, but everybody from conservative pundits to liberal pundits to politicians oftentimes employ the help of ghostwriters, and that means either you help write some or in some cases all of their book in private and secret, and then they get to slap their name and picture on it and take credit for it. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's about right. Chris, I would say that if a person is not a writer and he puts out a book, he had major help with that book. And that help can vary, from just like, a heavy edit to an actual writing the whole book. And what happened with Kristi Noem, I know I've done about 35 books, or for 35 people, I'd say. All of them are more prominent than I am. And so after my daughter said, "Dad, you didn't," I said, "Well, no, that's right. I forgot. I was involved in this process, right?" So I went back and checked my emails. And what the email said to me, they said, Kristi, I'm paraphrasing right here, but it's pretty close. We're working with Kristi Noem. Her book needs some brushing up. It's not personal enough, and it's too ranty, R-A-N-T-Y. Would this be of interest? And I said, yeah, I think at the time I said I think they had the interest. But here's the interesting thing, Chris. The email is 3 years old. This thing's been kicked around for at least 3 years.
Whoa. So three years ago, her publisher reached out to you and said, what she's written is too ranty and not personal enough. Do you think you have the stuff to spice it up a little bit? Did you punt on it, or you said you were interested and they just went a different direction?
I had forgotten all about it, which meant that they probably just went in a different direction, didn't follow up with me. Because oddly, I had, and I'm going to make a generalization here that half of your audience may or may not like, and that is that I had been working with them on another prominent Republican female. And I was a second or third author on that book.
Wow.
And I worked with them for about 2 weeks. And then I ran afoul of the publisher because it was a major book. And the publisher wanted an anti-Trump book. And I said, the person in question is not anti-Trump. Why are we doing this? And then the publisher got, catty with me for being injecting too much, but I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to write an anti-Trump book.
This is, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have to clarify. So you've been hired in the story you're just telling. There's a prominent Republican who is putting out a book, and she is supportive of Trump, at least publicly, and the publisher wants to hire you to throw some negative anti-Trump stuff in her book?
Yes. And by the way, I wasn't the first writer on this book. I was maybe the second or third. As with Kristi Noem, I was obviously not going to be the first writer on that book. Here's my generalization, Chris, that may bother some of your audience. I've worked with about 30 men. Never had a problem, right? Every contract I got, I finished, right? These people became my friends. You work with them so closely. About 5 women, problems with everyone.
Oh, see, now you're going to get it. So you said you've worked with 30 men without incident, and the 5 women you've worked with have had incidents. We'll leave it at that.
And I would say, it just reminds me of when my brother and I were kids. My mother would decide to move the furniture around, right? And we'd be standing there holding a couch in the air, and we'd say to her, think it through before you start, right? We're the ones. We're going to move these couches around.
I've never spoken to you about this, and you're a brilliant guy, and you write so well, and we've talked so many years about the things you've written, and so it makes sense that people would call you up for your insights and help punch up a book. Here's me. I am a guy who, if I ever sat down and tried to write a book, I would just feel heartsick that I would have to hand it over to a guy like you who's far smarter than me to make it into something digest. Like, if the publisher said, Chris, this isn't going to work, we got to give it to Jack to make it readable, I'd say, then maybe we should just shelve it. I don't think I could, in all honesty, I don't think I could release a book that I didn't write. Am I thinking correctly?
Yes, I feel like you do, and I think a lot of people do. And so in some cases, what will happen is, I wrote a book for a prominent doctor a couple of years ago, an anti-woke book, and I didn't write the book, but the editor, publisher, or the agent, whoever came to me and said, we need this to be less medicalese. We need it to be just toned down into understandable English, right? And the authors are usually a little squeamish about that, but they hand it off. They get it. They want to sell a book. I did the same thing with a prominent lawyer a few years ago. They just make it a little less legal,
So, okay, now this is fascinating. So I'm a guy who's written a book that wants to have a certain tone to it, and for whatever reason, the publisher isn't particularly happy with it. They call it too ranty or not personal enough. So they hand it off to someone like you, and you would do what with it exactly? I mean, you can't make things up like I talked to Kim Jong-un when I didn't, can you?
No. You would never make anything up. In fact, you would. The good ghostwriter should screen that stuff out. I would have called the dog out. You have to have sensitivity enough to your audience to know that, even though I didn't grow up on a ranch and I don't own a dog, I know dog owners. You don't want to alienate dog. You lose it. If Kristi Noem had already been on the ticket, Trump would have had to throw her off.
Wow, and so this is fascinating. So some ghostwriter, you're certain, probably injected that story after interviewing her, and then she said, well, okay, if you think it's best, keep it in? Is that the way it went?
I wouldn't be surprised. Based on the fact that when I got into it, it has to be more personal. So they want details, right? So she said, I'm a tough talker. I make tough decisions. And they said, give me an example, right? I mean, this is how it works. And because you want to personalize, don't you want to make it human? You know, you want to make it heartfelt and
yeah. So if
identifiable.
if they hired you to punch up her book, you would have to get on the phone with her and say, "All right, Governor, let's talk about your life," and you take notes on her.
That's right, exactly. And it's only in a rare case, and I'm only going to mention one person that I've ever talked about that I've given the name of, right, of an author, because it's a classic case of how, at a high level, ghostwriting works. I get this call. Again, the previous author couldn't do it, or it wasn't making a headway. And they brought me in. I never talked to the author, ever. He doesn't know my name, doesn't know I was involved. I talked to his secretary. He's one of Philadelphia's famous native sons. When the book came out, he had an hour interview on Meet the Press. He got an hour on Oprah. The book sold several 100,000 copies. And since then, his life has taken a turn for the seriously worse. So that's why I talk about it. But so ghostwriting, I doubt if he read the book.
That was my next question. Yeah. So you write this stuff. How many people go back and read what you add, or do they just hand it off and say, look, I did my best. You guys do what you need to do with it. Let's sell the thing, and they never read it again?
Some authors never read it.
Oh, God. I can't imagine doing national media on a book I'm supposedly have written, and I don't know what's in it. And then, an interviewer rightly says, so this says you met with Kim Jong-un, and I know good and well I didn't. So you have to then what, tap dance on live air? Well, I don't disclose conversations I've had. I mean, how do you...
Right.
How does that happen?
Or even if you just read it once superficially, and then you forgot that detail was in there, right? So it can happen. In the case of the prominent Philadelphian who has greater problems than not writing his own books, or I don't even believe he read them. I know he didn't read them in process. While we were working on it, he didn't read it. I was just dealing with a secretary who was very PC, unlike the author, and problematic in 1,000 ways. But no, that happens a lot. But good authors, most of the people I work with, I have really great relationships with. And we talk almost every day. And we talk, it's very personal. And so I go back and forth. I'm writing a book right now with a person who's, I'll talk to him later on this morning. But he'll talk. I write it all out into like a literary kind of form. I send it back to him. He reviews it. So every day, he's totally on top of it. English isn't his first language, so I understand why he would be reluctant to do this, try to write a book. It wouldn't work. It simply wouldn't work. Writing a book is hard.
Yes, it is.
Not only do you need a certain, skill, but you need time. You need blocks of time. You need like 4 or 5 hours at a time to sit down and write a book. And, I just finished my own book, which will be out next month, Chris. It's called Ashley, the untold story of the women of January 6th. And I got this assignment in, maybe October. So that meant I had to sit down every day and do 6 hours of writing and researching at the same time and interviewing there are 10 women profiled in the book, 8 of whom survived that day, 2 of whom did not. And I talked to the mother of Ashley Babbitt frequently, and it's an incredible story.
I can't wait to read that, and we'll have you back to talk about that. But the point you're making is what I said earlier, Jack, in the show, which is people that write for real sequester themselves for hours, days, and weeks. I mean, it's probably safe to say, and I guess I shouldn't call out everybody generically, but isn't it safe to say if you're a governor or you've got a pretty prominent job you're doing every day, it's pretty difficult to believe they sat down and wrote a book?
Yep, and that's where I got in the most trouble ever, when I discerned that Barack Obama had major help with Dreams from My Father.
Yeah, you should. I mean, the work you did on Dreams from My Father was wonderful stuff. And you believe ultimately that book is what?
It's not. It's doctored. It's not fully ghostwritten because parts of it really suck.
Well, Jack, this is something I don't think most people. Do you think
the hand of Bill Ayers is visible in spot after spot after spot? You know?
What should we think about people? I'm struggling with this. Is this a character thing or not? I mean, I don't want to call it dishonest, but is there? What should you think of people who publish a book and don't disclose, hey, I had help with this? I think I'd have to. Like, I wrote a book, but I had to have a lot of help from my buddy Jack. Like, I'd want to put your name on it or something. I couldn't not.
Well, you know what I do is I tell my authors I don't want credit because I don't want to. I don't think ghostwriters. There's one guy wrote this big article in the New Yorker about how he actually wrote Spare, the book about Prince Harry. I just thought it was totally unethical for him to do that because I try to keep my presence as minimal as possible. And so I try to write in the style that person talks and thinks. So I'm not, it seems like him. And ideally, it reflects everything he thinks and believes. So I don't think it's unethical for, let's say, a person who's a prominent politician or something to claim credit for a book that he did not write. But if he doesn't read it, if he doesn't guide it, monitor it, monitor it, all the process, edit it, amend it, then it's a fraud. And that's when fraud gets you in trouble.
Well,
because you don't even know what's in your own book.
Now I feel differently about it. So watch for my brand new book coming out later this summer called Jack Cashill. It is great to catch up with you, my friend. By the way, the latest book, Untenable, The True Story of White Ethnic Flight from America's Cities, it talks about Jack's upbringing in New Jersey. Great read and another great bestseller. And I can't wait to hear more about this upcoming book on the ladies of January 6th, Jack. Thank you for your perspective on this. I learned a lot today.
Hey, Chris, always fun to talk about it because not many people talk to the ghostwriter. So
I don't think most people know what goes on. I think so. No. Caveat emptor is what you're saying when you read a book about anyone.
Yeah, caveat emptor, but also it's not like I say. If you're not a writer and you have something powerful to say, I don't think you're cheating the public by having help. In other words.
And I guess if you felt that way, you'd probably be out of a job, to be honest, Jack.
Come on. Right. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do it if I thought I was cheating people, So.
Thank you, buddy. Great to talk to you again.
They paid enough. Okay. Take care, Chris.
The Chris Stigall Show Podcast.